Let's do an update on Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, this is the socialite that is being accused of procuring women for uber apex sexual pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Now, Epstein, of course, apparently suicided himself, or was helped suicided, let's say it that way. And in the prison cell, all sorts of calamity went on. The camera wasn't necessarily working. The guards fell asleep. It's like all of these things took place that allowed him to basically supposedly off himself. But they get Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, the question on everybody's lips after Epstein was helped suicide or was given assistance in that suicide, my own conjecture, I don't know, as a flat fact, but fair enough. That's my own hypothesis on that. But whoever or whatever happened in regards to Epstein, they were entirely sure that they weren't going to let it happen to her. Meaning it is an embarrassment for one of the most high profile criminals that was in this country at that moment. He was an international pedophile. If there was an apex to a breed of pedophilia, he was that guy. Rich, unclear even on where the wealth came from, had all of these contacts in the military, in the press, in politics. And, the thought was that there were a lot of people that if Epstein opened his mouth or went into a courtroom, that would be in trouble over this just because of the number of people that he knows. Bill Clinton, Richardson, oh God, it's a Rolodex of people. And so you can understand the idea that him coming to those ends was understood. And I think I even said as much before it happened. Ghislaine Maxwell, however, people kept asking, how is she still walking around? Because understand, at one point there was an interview with Prince Andrew. Prince Andrew looked guilty as sin. I have no idea why Prince Andrew took that interview. And if somebody advised him to do that, that person should have been fired immediately. Prince Andrew was even he said at one point in an interview that when he was at war, he was so terrified that he lost the ability to sweat. So when she's making the allegation about him sweating like an ogre, or sweating like a bear or whatever, that has to be wrong. Has to be wrong. Like, it was obscene. It was vilified across the board as bad and horrific. And it's like, how is he still walking around? If it wasn't for him being part of the royal family, that would have probably landed him in significant trouble. The Queen just basically kicked him to the back. But in the case of Ghislaine Maxwell, she has no such support like that. And everybody wanted to know where was Ghislaine. Well, they eventually found her. And in finding her, it looked like she was going to flee. And so the thought was, we're going to make sure she stays alive. One, she's not going anywhere. Two, and I suppose they're going to put pressure on her to try to get her to talk. The interesting thing here, though, is that Ghislaine Maxwell is actually petitioning the court to drop the charges. Now, it's the reasons why she wants to drop the charges that are the mind-blowing part of why I'm doing this video. Because part of her reasoning goes back to Acosta, the one that was working for Trump, that gave that sweetheart deal to Epstein in the first place. The deal that basically allowed him to plead guilty, but I think it was like a year, where he had to have 1 day in jail or something like that, but he could be out for work for the rest of the week. And then it was found out that even during that time, when he was at that kind of work release stuff, that he was abusing girls, children, even then. Even then. I want to go into her defense as to why the case should be dropped. There are not enough black people or Hispanics on this jury. This is not representative of America. Now, that in and of itself is awesome, right? There are too many white people on this jury. I don't think I've ever heard that. But fair enough. There are too many white people on this jury. Actually, I have heard that when they're sentencing one of us to prison or something. But in her very specific case, that's one. But the other argument is the one that's even more melancholy in an odd way. Like, it's dramatically unsatisfying and even I would say radically unsettling if that second argument prospers at all. That basically Epstein has washed her clean of her sins and even from the grave protects her. Welcome to the soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, and subscribe. You can always support this content through PayPal or Patreon. This content is brought to you by you, and I appreciate you the opportunity for allowing me to do it. This story, I had it sitting in my queue for a day because I wanted to actually cover this one because of the reasoning that she's using. And I don't think people realize, what she's using as an argument, going back to Epstein. Epstein, potentially, is still protecting her from the grave. At the very least, that's the argument that her lawyer is making on her behalf. So the government thus violated Mrs. Maxwell's Sixth Amendment right here. In a series of motions to dismiss, Maxwell's attorney alleged prosecutors improperly obtained the indictment against her and accused the grand jury of not properly representing Southern District of New York, where she was indicted. Meaning, this indictment wasn't in White Plains. And White Plains is more of an affluent area. And so he's making the point that, look, if she is caught, or if the crimes were committed in the Southern District of New York, then she wants to be represented by, let's say, a jury of her peers for that area. Meaning there needs to be more blacks, more Hispanics in this jury. That's one argument. That's mind-blowing. But fair enough. Do you, boo? Make your arguments. Everybody get to make their arguments in court, right? At a certain point, the judge gets a little pissed off at that, but you can make your argument. This comes across as a delay of sorts. Now, delay in the sense that if the judge agrees, then what are they going to do? Are they going to punt it to New York or something to that effect? New York City? But let's put that one to the side for the moment. That one is more of a technical glitch in a weird way, in the way that she's trying to argue that. The second one is the part that is more profound to me. And that's the part that people are going to be greatly unsettled by if it works. Greatly unsettled by. So think back to Acosta for the moment. Epstein gets caught. Epstein is caught dead to rights. Pedophile. Apex. Billionaire. Or very least close. Pedophile. And international in the scope. I mean, he had a pedophile island, for God's sake, where he would basically take young girls to that particular island and, basically bring other people associated with them as the thoughts go. And the staff and whatnot just kind of kept their mouth shut if they were there at all. So he's busted. He ends up with a sweetheart deal given to him by Acosta. Now, Acosta didn't even tell the victims of this deal, which was something that was supposed to be done. Basically, he broke the law in doing that. Now, the judge threw that out for the most part, meaning the judge says, yes, he did break the law. No, we're not necessarily going to do anything different in regards to pulling any money from his estate or something like that. But more importantly, from this standpoint, Acosta lost his job in the Trump administration when this came to light that he gave Epstein that deal. Now, let's go into the deal for the moment. Because the deal is weird. It's like, wait a minute. Why would you give him all that? Why would you make this agreement with him on these terms? Did somebody tell you to make this agreement? Did somebody whisper in your ear? Are you affiliated with him? Are other people affiliated with him that might have put pressure on you? Do you guys float in similar circles? Or at the very least in circles where maybe your boss or your manager circulates? I mean, for God's sake, Epstein has contacts with all sorts of people in government, including ex-presidents, princes, for God's sake. He's on defense industries. This guy is all over the place. Yes, he seemed to be proficient in real estate. That seems to be the case where Donald Trump intersects with him in some cases and some of the other people. But at the end of the day, How did he make these contacts? And is it possible, to any degree that's possible, that those contacts, one of which, maybe more, reached out to Acosta? Now, Acosta say it was beyond my pay grade. Wouldn't elaborate, but it kind of speaks for itself, what he's trying to imply. Here's the thing, though. This is what Acosta basically gave him. Acosta's decision back then to sign a non-prosecution deal or agreement that allowed Epstein to serve only 13 months in county jail with permission to leave the building and go to work 6 days a week has led to repeated waves of public outrage in years since. Yes. In that deal, Acosta agreed not to pursue federal charges. Right here. This is the part that I remember. And this is why I'm bringing this up. Acosta agreed not to pursue federal charges against Epstein or 4 women who government said procured girls for him. In the exchange, Epstein agreed to plead guilty to state solicitation charge, register as a sex offender, and pay a restitution to victims. So the question becomes, who are the 4 women that are in that agreement? And is Ghislane Maxwell one of the women that are in that agreement? That's the question, right? I mean, if her argument is basically when Epstein was caught dead to rights, and when Epstein made the decision to basically take the plea deal, and in taking that plea deal, he says, I'm going to take this deal, but I also want to protect 4 pedophile accomplices. Yes. Yeah. 4 pedophile accomplices. That's what I want to protect. Now, in saying that I want to protect the 4 pedophile accomplices, Acosta even gave them that. Meaning they couldn't even go after other people that were implicated in these crimes. Is Ghislaine Maxwell one of the people that is in that agreement? That's the question. And the judge or her lawyer clearly is going to argue that, because that is basically what the lawyer is arguing, that Ghislaine Maxwell is already covered in the previous non-prosecutorial agreement, that she's one of the names that Epstein was talking about, and as such, you can't go after her for crimes like this, considering she's covered by the agreement. Imagine for the moment if the judge comes back and says, you know what, I agree with you. Because you were one of the people that was helping Epstein pick out women and rape those particular young girls, he included you, so we can't do anything about it. Can you imagine a judge coming back and saying something like that and making that particular ruling? That's why this is such a Hail Mary in order to go with. Because if you're going to make this argument like that, you're basically, on some level, accounting for guilt in order to plead your innocence. Isn't that wild? Like, that's such a mindfuck of a ruling. Basically, what are they going to do now? And I got to be honest, I don't even know if this entirely applies. I mean, I think this is, let's see, grand jury, Maxwell White Plains. I think this is a federal case, but I'm not quite sure. But let's see, it's right here. In a series of motions to dismiss, Maxwell's attorney alleged prosecution properly obtained indictment against her to access the grand jury of not properly representing the Southern District of New York. So, okay, so the question becomes whether or not her lawyers can make the sufficient argument to make that stick. And just understand the weirdness in the argument. Just understand the weirdness in the argument. That's the only reason we're trying to circle around this. Well, that, and I was covering the Epstein stuff before. But if indeed it gets to a point where they're basically saying, look, she's included in the non-prosecution agreement. What, you mean the agreement where he was protecting the other pedophiles? Yes, that agreement. Was she one of the other pedophiles working with Epstein to procure other women? Yes. And so she should be protected and let go because she is protected in that non-prosecutorial agreement. That would be a mind-blowing thing to say. And I would think a judge is going to have a very hard time accepting that argument. I could be wrong. I could be very wrong, but there is going to be all sorts of pressure that judge is going to feel if that judge walks out there and tells the public, you're right, you're one of the people that Epstein didn't want to get implicated in crimes and being affiliated with him, and he took the 13 months to protect you. So you're right, you get to walk. Congratulations. All of your crimes, your sins are washed by Epstein, who's protecting you from the grave. Can you imagine a judge coming out and saying that? Neither can I. Neither can I. This is a Hail Mary, if ever. Because in order to even make the argument, you almost have to admit to some level of guilt. If not now, at the very least, guilt back then, in order to make this argument right now that you're covered by the agreement. That's wild. That's so wild. I'm going to say like, I'm going to say share, and I'm going to say subscribe. Thanks all. I'll see you in a few. Oh, by the way, make sure you're subscribed. Google does weird stuff sometimes. So definitely hit the button and hit the notification bell and all that good stuff.